She rejected the king, so he gave her to his deadliest warrior. Part 1. The night King Zane decided to punish Eva Sinclair. He smiled while he did it. That was the part she would never forget. Not the words, though the words were bad enough. Not the court full of wolves watching with held breath and carefully neutral faces. Not the cold stone floor under her bare feet or the weight of 300 pairs of eyes, or the particular silence that falls over a room when something irreversible is about to happen. It was the smile. Thin. Satisfied. The smile of a man who had been waiting for a reason and was pleased to have finally found one. You refused your king, Zane said. His voice carried the way voices did in the ironstone throne room. Off the vaulted ceilings, off the dark stone walls, filling every corner, reaching every ear. Zane had a voice built for throne rooms. Built for pronouncements. Built for the specific performance of absolute authority. Eva stood in the center of the floor and kept her chin up and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say that would help. She had learned that in the 3 seconds after she'd said no. Had watched his face go from expectant to still to that terrible thin smile and understood, in the animal part of her brain that was older than language, that she had just stepped off something with no bottom. In front of my court, he continued. In front of my wolves. My beta. My council. He let each word land separately, like stones into water. My king's claim refused. A murmur moved through the court. Not protest. Agreement. The particular social sound of a group of people watching someone be made an example of and being relieved it isn't them. Eva breathed in. Breathed out. Kept her eyes on a point just past Zane's left shoulder. She was 24 years old. Daughter of the late Gamma Sinclair, mid-ranked, unremarkable by pack standards in every measurable way. She worked in the pack medical center, was in fact one of the best field medics Ironstone pack had produced in a generation, though nobody in power had ever found this particularly relevant information. She had been summoned to the throne room 2 hours ago. Had been told by Zane's beta that the king wished to take her as his chosen mate. She had said no. She had said no because she had been in the medical center 3 months ago, when they brought in a woman from the Western Quarter with injuries that the official report called an accident. Eva had cleaned those injuries and had known, with the clinical certainty of someone who had been treating wolves for 4 years, that they were not an accident. She had known whose hands had caused them, and she had known whose name nobody in that medical center would write in the report. She had said no because she knew what kind of king Zane was. And now she was standing on the cold throne room floor with 300 wolves watching and his smile getting thinner and sharper, and she was calculating very fast what came next. A wolf who refuses her king, Zane said, cannot remain in the king's house. He stood from the throne. He was tall. All the Ironstone kings were tall, bred for it. It was practically in the job description. He descended the 3 steps from the dais with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew nothing in the room would move without his permission. And so you will leave it. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the copper flecks in his cold eyes. You will be given to the one wolf in my pack who has asked for nothing and received less. His smile widened slightly. My enforcer. My weapon. My deadliest warrior. He paused, letting it land. Kai Mercer. A different sound moved through the court now. Not agreement. Something with more edges. Something that sounded almost like pity. Eva had heard of Kai Mercer. Every wolf in Ironstone had heard of Kai Mercer. You did not hear of him. He was the kind of presence that existed in a pack the way a storm existed on a horizon. Not always visible, but always known, always felt, the awareness of him sitting at the back of every wolf's mind like a weather warning that never fully cleared. The king's enforcer. The wolf sent when sending anyone else was insufficient. The wolf who had ended more threats to Ironstone pack than anyone cared to count, who fought with a brutality and efficiency that the pack found useful and also slightly terrifying, who lived alone at the edge of pack territory in a house that no one visited voluntarily. Nobody knew much about him beyond the shape of what he did. Nobody had tried very hard to find out more. And now he was standing at the back of the throne room and Eva turned to look at him and he was looking at her and his face was nothing. Completely still. Dark eyes giving nothing away. A man carved from granite looking at a situation he hadn't asked for and revealing exactly 0 opinions about it. Kai Mercer, Zane said, not looking away from Eva's face, will take you to his territory. You will remain there until I decide otherwise. The smile was gone now, replaced by something flatter and more honest. Consider it a lesson in what happens when wolves forget their place. Eva looked at him. She thought about the woman in the medical center with injuries that nobody would write in the report. She thought about her father, who had died serving this king's father with his whole heart and had been buried with a mid-gamma's honors and a handshake from the successor who'd already forgotten his name. She thought about 4 years of work in that medical center, of hands that knew how to stop bleeding and start healing, of a gift she'd been told was acceptable for someone of her rank. She thought about all of this and she said very quietly, so only Zane could hear, "The lesson will be yours eventually." His eyes went flat and cold. She turned. She walked toward the back of the throne room, toward the large, still dark-eyed man who was watching her approach with an expression she couldn't read and a presence that hit her like a wall of heat even from 20 feet away. She stopped in front of him. Up close he was, larger than she'd registered from across the room. Not just tall, broad through the shoulders in a way that suggested his wolf was something enormous. Dark hair, dark eyes, a jaw that looked like it had been set against something painful for so long it had forgotten how to unclench. A scar at his temple, another at his throat. The hands of someone who had spent decades being the thing that stood between the pack and the things trying to destroy it. He looked at her. She looked at him. "I'm Eva," she said. Something moved in his expression. Small. Almost nothing. "I know," he said. His voice was low. Quiet. The opposite of Zane's throne room projection. A voice that didn't need to fill spaces, that was built for close quarters and truth. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "Neither did I," he said. They looked at each other for one more moment. "All right," she said. He turned. She followed. Behind them, the court watched them go. And the sound that followed them out was the particular sound of a room full of people who had just witnessed something they didn't fully understand yet. Welcome back to the channel, my beautiful people. If this is your first time here, oh, you have arrived on exactly the right day at exactly the right story. This channel is your home for the most emotional, the most heart-stopping, the most utterly impossible to turn off werewolf romance stories you will find anywhere. I mean that with everything I have. Today's story is called She Rejected the King, so he gave her to his deadliest warrior. And I need you to understand right now that this one is different. This one has layers. This one is going to take you somewhere and leave you completely changed by the time we reach the end. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city and country in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely love knowing where in the world this story is finding you right now. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it this second. One tap. It takes 2 seconds and it is the single best thing you can do for this channel. Alright, let's go back to Eva. And let's talk about Kai Mercer. Part 2. Eva Sinclair had been taking care of people since she was 9 years old. That was when her mother left. Not dramatically, not with a scene, but quietly, in the way that some people leave when the weight of a life becomes heavier than their ability to carry it. She simply was there one morning and not there the next. And Eva's father had stood in the kitchen looking at the space where his mate used to be with an expression that Eva would spend years trying to forget. She had made him breakfast that morning. Had made it every morning after that. Her father, Gamma Sinclair, a solid, honorable, unremarkable man who served his pack with a kind of quiet faithfulness that never gets statues made of it, had done his best. He had loved his daughter with the particular fierce simplicity of a man who was better at showing up than explaining himself. He attended every pack ceremony she was part of. He learned slowly and with great effort how to braid her hair. He sat outside the medical training room on the day she qualified and had waited 3 hours to tell her he was proud. He had died when she was 21. A border skirmish, swift and brutal and nobody's fault specifically. The kind of death that packs accumulated the way they accumulated scar tissue, as evidence of survival, logged and filed and eventually forgotten by everyone except the people left behind. Eva had not been left behind by much else. She had the medical center. She had the work, the particular absorption of healing, the satisfaction of a skill that was entirely hers, built by her own hands and her own years of learning. She had a small apartment in the mid-rank quarter and a herb garden on the windowsill and 2 colleagues she liked and trusted. And that was enough. She had decided it was enough. She had decided at some point she couldn't precisely identify that wanting more than enough was a luxury she couldn't afford. Pack life had a hierarchy and she was where she was in it, and pressing against the walls of that hierarchy had a cost she'd seen paid by people she loved. She was not ambitious. She was not political. She was precise and capable and quietly determined, and she asked for very little. Which was perhaps why, when Zane's beta appeared in the medical center doorway and said the king wished to take her as his chosen mate, she had experienced exactly 4 seconds of something that was not quite surprise. Because she had known, not as something she'd articulated, but as something she'd felt in the back of her mind for months, that this was coming. She'd caught Zane watching her twice, with the specific quality of a man cataloging something he wanted. She'd ignored it because ignoring things was generally safer, because she was mid-rank and unimportant and kings did not usually follow through on the idle attention they paid to mid-rank medics. But Zane was not a usual king, and she had seen the woman in the medical center. She thought about that woman every day. Had thought about her in the 4 seconds between the beta's announcement and her answer. Had thought, if I say yes, I become the woman in the medical center. If I say yes, I trade my life for proximity to power and I spend the rest of it making sure the injuries look like accidents. She had said no. She did not regret it. What she felt, sitting in the back of Kai Mercer's truck as they drove through the dark toward the edge of pack territory, was not regret. It was something more like the feeling that comes after a very loud noise, The ringing silence, the recalibration, the assessment of what damage had been done and what still worked. She looked at the back of his head. At his hands on the steering wheel, large, scarred, holding the wheel with a lightness that seemed at odds with everything else about him. How far? She said. 40 minutes, he said. Is there a spare room? A pause. Yes. Good. She looked out the window. The packed territory slid past. The lit streets of the central quarter giving way to darker roads, wider spaces, the trees getting denser and the houses getting fewer. I'm not going to cause you problems, she said. He said nothing. I mean that genuinely, not as a reassurance. I don't want to be here any more than you want me here. I intend to stay out of your way, not touch your things, and be gone the moment this situation resolves itself. She paused. Whatever that looks like. A longer pause. All right, he said. All right, she said. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The house at the edge of packed territory was not what she'd expected. She had expected something that matched his reputation. Stark, functional, cold. A soldier's space. Minimal and hard-edged. Built for someone who treated comfort as a weakness. The house was large and old and surrounded by trees so established they had clearly been there for decades before the house was. Inside it was not warm exactly but not cold either. There were books. A great many books, which surprised her, organized on shelves that lined the main room from floor to ceiling. A fireplace that looked used. A kitchen that was clean and functional. A table that had clearly hosted meals alone for a very long time. She stood in the main room and looked at the books. He stood behind her and watched her look at them. Medical texts, she said, noting a whole shelf. Pack history. These are territorial law volumes. She turned. You read? Yes, he said. I didn't expect that. Something moved across his face. Not offense. He'd clearly developed a robust immunity to people's expectations being wrong about him. Something more like the particular expression of someone who has been underestimated so comprehensively, for so long that they've stopped bothering to correct it. Room is upstairs, he said. Second on the right. There's a bathroom across the hall. He paused. I leave early. Don't wait on meals. Another pause, shorter. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. Thank you, she said. He nodded. Turned toward the other end of the house. Kai, she said. He stopped. What did Zane tell you? When he arranged this? A beat. That you needed somewhere to be. That's all. That's all he said. His voice was even giving nothing away. It wasn't a conversation. Zane doesn't have conversations. He issues instructions. She held his gaze for a moment. And you follow them. Something shifted. Not much. I do what I'm required to do, he said carefully. Is that the same thing? He looked at her for a long moment. His expression was the closed, careful thing she was already starting to recognize as his default, the face of someone who had learned, at some point and for some reason, to keep everything behind walls so thick and high that the habit of building them had become indistinguishable from the walls themselves. Get some rest, he said. You've had a difficult evening. He left the room. She stood among his books and thought that Kai Mercer was considerably more complicated than his reputation suggested. She thought that was either very good or very bad. She wasn't sure yet which. She had one person who would come. She sent a message from her phone that night, sitting on the bed in the spare room that was clean and spare and smelled of cedar and old wood. The message was 3 words. I'm at Mercer's. The response came back in under a minute. On my way. Her name was Maya. 26, pack medic like Eva, with sharp eyes and sharper opinions and the absolute inability to leave well enough alone that Eva had spent 4 years finding simultaneously exasperating and essential. Maya was the daughter of a senior beta and had, consequently, a slightly better view of the political landscape than most mid-rank wolves and absolutely no patience for pretending the view was fine. She arrived at 7 the next morning, which meant she'd driven through the night. Eva met her at the door. Maya looked at the house, at the trees, at Eva's face. Are you hurt? She said. No. Did he? No. Nothing happened. He gave me a room and left me alone. Eva stepped back to let her in. Come inside. Maya came inside and looked around the main room with the assessing speed of someone running a rapid threat evaluation. Her eyes landed on the books. Stayed there for a moment. Huh, she said. I know. That's not what Maya stopped. Turned to Eva. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So Eva told her. Everything, including the part she'd never told anyone. The woman in the medical center, the injuries that weren't an accident, the knowledge that had sat in her chest for 3 months like a coal that never went cold. Maya was very quiet through all of it. When Eva finished, Maya said, You have to tell someone. Who? His beta? His council. Eva shook her head. They're his. All of them. The Interpack Council. Takes months and requires documented evidence, and in the meantime, I'm living at the edge of pack territory in a stranger's house while Zane runs the pack. Eva pressed her lips together. I'm not doing nothing. But I need to be smart about it. Then be smart about it, Maya said. She looked toward the hallway where, presumably, Kai Mercer was somewhere in the house. What about him? I don't know yet, Eva said honestly. He works for Zane. He does what he's required to do, Eva said, which was not the same thing, but she didn't explain why she thought so. Maya looked at her with the particular expression she deployed when she suspected Eva was being naive about something. Be careful, she said. Always, Eva said. She had been at the house for 3 days before she and Kai had a real conversation. It happened in the kitchen early morning, before he left for whatever the day required of him. She was making tea. He came in for coffee, moving through the space with the particular awareness of someone who was very used to being the only person in a room and was recalibrating constantly to account for her presence, giving her space, tracking where she was without looking directly, the unconscious choreography of a man who had lived alone for a long time. You were in the Ravenmore campaign, she said. He stopped, looked at her. I treated 3 wolves who came back from it, she said. The injuries were distinctive. She poured her tea. You were the one who got them out. Yes, he said. 7 wolves trapped behind enemy lines for 4 days. She looked at him. You went in alone. Yes. Why alone? A pause. Because sending more would have meant more casualties. The path in had a bottleneck. 1 wolf could get through. More couldn't. He poured his coffee. Simple math. Simple math, she repeated. That's how you think about it? He looked at her steadily. How should I think about it? I don't know. Most people who do something like that think about it as something. Sacrifice. Courage. Something with a name. It was a problem with a solution, he said. I was the solution. She looked at him for a long moment. At the scar at his temple and the one at his throat and the hands wrapped around the coffee mug, and the eyes that were giving nothing away, and the whole complicated architecture of a person who had been reducing themselves to utility for so long they'd started to believe that was all they were. Who decided that? She said. He looked at her. That you were the solution, she said. Who decided that the answer to every dangerous problem was to send you in alone? A long silence. I'm good at it, he said finally. I didn't ask if you were good at it. He said nothing. She picked up her tea. I'm going to work in the herb garden today, she said. I noticed you have one behind the east wall. It's been neglected. It has, he said. May I? Another pause. Shorter. Yes, he said. She nodded. Went to the door. Stopped. Kai. Yes. Being good at surviving dangerous things alone doesn't mean you were made to do it alone. She paused. That's just what you learned. It's not the same as what's true. She went to the herb garden. He stood in his kitchen for a long time. Part 3. On the 5th day, Zane sent a message. It came through official pack channels, not to her directly but to Kai, which was its own kind of statement. The message was brief and very clear. Eva Sinclair was to have no contact with pack members beyond her current residence. Her medical center access was suspended. She was not to leave the eastern boundary of Kai's territory without escort. House arrest essentially. Made possible by the fact that Ironstone's king had the authority to restrict any pack member's movement within territory, and nobody with the power to challenge it was willing to. She read the message over Kai's shoulder. He had left it on the kitchen table, open, which she thought might have been deliberate, and felt a specific cold settle in her chest. He's isolating me, she said. Yes, Kai said. This is what he does. She kept her voice level. When he wants to make someone pliable, he removes their connections first. Their work. Their people. She paused. The woman in the medical center. Before she was hurt, she'd been isolated for 3 months. Kai went very still. She looked at him. You know about her. Not a question. His jaw tightened. I know what I've been told, he said carefully. Which is? That it was an accident. He said it in a way that was not quite agreement. It wasn't, she said. I treated her. I know what those injuries were. She held his gaze. And I know who caused them. And so do you. A long silence. The kind that had weight in it, the kind that existed because the thing trying to fill it was something too heavy to just say. Eva, he said. I'm not asking you to act on it, she said quickly. I know your position. I know what it would cost you. She stopped. I'm just tired of pretending I don't know what I know. He looked at her for a long moment. What do you need? He said. The question surprised her. Not because it was wrong, because it was so simply directly right. Not what do you want, not what are you planning, not the defensive calculation of a man worried about implication. Just what do you need? I need Maya, she said. I need to be able to talk to my colleague. She stopped. There are patients at the medical center who need follow-up care. Specific patients who have conditions that require monitoring. She met his eyes. I need to be able to do my work. He nodded slowly. The contact restriction I can challenge on procedural grounds. Zane issued it without Beta Council approval, which is required for movement restrictions above level 2. He paused. It'll take 2 days. You know pack law, she said. I told you. I read. She almost smiled. The other thing, he said more carefully. What you told me about the woman. The injuries. He held her gaze. I've seen things. Working for Zane over the years. Things I filed under necessary or unclear or not my place to question. He stopped. I'm beginning to reconsider some of those filings. She looked at him steadily. What changed, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. You said no to him, he said. In the throne room. In front of everyone. You said no and then you said, he paused. I couldn't hear what you said to him before you turned, but I could see his face afterward. I told him the lesson would be his eventually, she said. Something moved through Kai's expression. Something she was beginning to learn to read. A small, careful, tightly controlled thing that was the emotional equivalent of a door opening 1 inch. Yes, he said quietly. That's what I thought you said. Maya came the next day. She arrived with medical supplies. A bag over each shoulder. Because Maya operated on the principle that preparation was the difference between a situation and a crisis. And the expression of someone who had spent 36 hours being furious on behalf of someone she loved. She stopped short when Kai opened the door. She was not a small woman and she had absolutely no natural deference to wolf hierarchy, but she looked up at Kai Mercer and had the very rare experience of recalibrating. She looked at him for 3 full seconds in silence. You're bigger than I expected, she said. Most people say that, he said. Is Eva all right? She's in the garden. Maya looked past him into the house. The books. Her expression did the same thing Eva's had done. The small recalibration, the revision of a picture she'd been holding. She looked back at Kai. I'm going to need to use the kitchen, she said. I brought supplies for a compress she needs and I require counter space. All right, he said and stepped back from the door. Maya came in, set her bags down, and began organizing the kitchen with the efficiency of a woman who had been reorganizing other people's spaces her entire life. Kai watched this for a moment with an expression that was not quite bewilderment but was adjacent to it. She's always like this, Eva said, appearing from the hallway. I heard that, Maya said. I know, Eva said. What changed after Maya arrived was texture. The house had been quiet before, in the particular way of spaces occupied by one person for a long time, a quietness that had become structural. Now it was different. Maya filled space without apology, talked when she had something to say, asked questions she expected to be answered, and treated Kai Mercer with the same straightforward matter-of-factness she treated everyone, which was to say, as a person subject to the normal rules of human interaction, not exempt from conversation or expectation because of his reputation or his size or the particular stillness he carried. Kai did not know what to do with this. Eva watched him figure it out with a private fascination. Watched him recalibrate to the presence of 2 women in his space who were not afraid of him and were not performing not afraid of him, who were simply, genuinely, treating him like a person they just met and were in the process of deciding about. On the second evening, Maya cornered him in the kitchen while Eva was outside. Eva could hear the conversation through the open window. You work for Zane, Maya said. Not accusatory. Factual. Yes, Kai said. How long? 8 years. In 8 years, how many times has he done something you thought was wrong? A pause. Long enough to be its own kind of answer. I see, Maya said. And how many times did you do something about it? Another pause. That's what I thought, Maya said, not unkindly. Here's the thing about being the most dangerous wolf in the room, Kai. And I'm going to call you Kai because we're past formality at this point. The most dangerous wolf in the room has a choice that nobody else has. They can use that to protect the wrong things or the right things, but they don't get to pretend the choice doesn't exist. A very long silence. Who are you? Kai said. I'm her person, Maya said simply. And I'm telling you that what's coming is bigger than Zane wanting to punish a woman who said no. There's a pattern here. And Eva is sitting in the middle of it because she's the only one who's been close enough and paying enough attention and brave enough to say out loud what everyone else is pretending not to see. A pause. The question is what you're going to do about that. Because you are in a position to do something. And that means the choice is yours whether you want it or not. Eva stood in the garden and listened and thought that Maya was extraordinary, and also that the silence from Kai's side of that conversation was the most meaningful thing she'd heard in a week. On the 8th day, everything broke open. She was in the medical files that Maya had brought, paper copies of patient records, the ones that had been misfiled or overlooked or quietly buried, when she found it. Not one woman. Not a single incident. 7 women. Over 4 years. All treated at the Ironstone Medical Center. All with injuries classified as accidents. All in the months immediately following the documented end of a king's interest claim, the formal pact designation for a king's romantic pursuit. 7 women who had, in various ways and for various reasons, ended or avoided Zane's attention. 7 sets of injuries that Eva, reading the clinical descriptions with 4 years of medical experience, could identify as anything but accidental. 7 records, each one signed off by a different senior medic. None of the medics still working at the center. All of them transferred, retired, or gone from the pack entirely. Her hands were not quite steady when she set the files down. She found Kai. He was in the main room reading. Eva went back to the medical center on Friday, Maya beside her, and spent the day doing the work she'd been kept from for 10 days. Her patients were glad to see her. 2 of her colleagues were careful and neutral in the way of people who had received instructions about how to behave around her. 1, an older medic named Dr. James, who had been at the center for 30 years and had the particular integrity of someone who had outlasted many political seasons, pressed her hand when he saw her and said nothing, which said everything. She worked. She observed. She paid attention. She was paying attention to the right things, which was why she noticed on her 3rd day back that one of the junior medics, a young woman named Ivy, 22, recently ranked up to the medical team from training, had the quality she had learned to recognize. A particular careful stillness. A way of occupying space that was slightly smaller than her body required. An alertness that was not curiosity but watchfulness. Eva knew that quality. She had worn it herself. She watched Ivy for 3 days before she said anything. Then she found her alone in the supply room and closed the door and said very quietly, "How long has he been watching you?" Ivy went completely still. "You don't have to answer," Eva said. "I'm not going to push. I just want you to know that I see it. And that you're not alone in this." She paused. "And that there are people who are trying to do something about it. Real people with real information, who are building something that might actually be able to stop it." She held Ivy's gaze. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Ivy looked at her for a long moment with the eyes of someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and was measuring very carefully whether putting it down was safe. "He sent me flowers last week," Ivy said. Eva's heart dropped. "Okay," she said steadily. "Okay. Here's what we're going to do," she told Kai that evening. He was in the kitchen when she came home. She had started thinking of it as home, which she noted with a separate, private part of her mind and filed away for later, and he looked up when she came in and immediately knew something had happened. "There's another one," she said. "It's starting with another one." She told him about Ivy. He listened with the complete attention she'd come to rely on, the way he processed things thoroughly and without rushing, giving the information the weight it deserved. "We need to move faster," he said. "I know. The files alone aren't enough," he said. 7 historical records that have all been officially classified as accidents. A good legal team can argue misdiagnosis, context, alternative explanations. "We need testimony." He looked at her. "We need the women." She had been thinking about this. "Some of them left the pack." "I know where they went," he said. She looked at him. "You do." "I know where everyone in this pack goes," he said, without any particular pride in it. "It's part of what I do. What I did." The past tense was deliberate, she noticed. "I can find them." "Will they talk to you?" A pause. "Probably not to me," he said. "But they might talk to you." She thought about this. "It'll take time we might not have. If Zane moves on Ivy, then we protect Ivy first," he said immediately. "That's not negotiable." She looked at him. Something had shifted in him over the last 10 days. Not dramatically, he was still Kai, still contained, still with those walls that had been built over years and weren't coming down in a week. But something behind the walls had moved, had turned toward the light, slightly like a plant adjusting. She was trying very hard not to pay attention to this. She was not succeeding. "I'll talk to her tomorrow," Eva said. "About coming here. At least temporarily." She paused. "Is that?" "Yes," he said before she finished asking. "You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to ask if it was all right to bring her here if she needed somewhere safe." He held her gaze. "The answer is yes. This house is." He stopped. "Yes. Bring her if she needs it." She looked at him. "Kai," she said. "Eva," he said. And they were both quiet for a moment with everything that was in that exchange and neither of them quite ready to look at it directly. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," he said. "I'm catching up. That's all." She thought that catching up, for Kai Mercer, looked like a man dismantling something he'd built around himself brick by brick, in the cold, alone with his bare hands. She thought it was one of the braver things she'd watched a person do. She went to bed. She did not sleep immediately. She lay in the cedar-smelling spare room and listened to the house settle and thought about what Maya had said. The most dangerous wolf in the room has a choice. And she thought about Kai making that choice, slowly and at cost, in the privacy of his own recalibrating conscience. She thought that she was in significant trouble of a very specific kind. She thought that was a problem for another day. They found the first woman 2 weeks later. Her name was Leah. She lived 2 territories over, in a small pack that had given her sanctuary 5 years ago when she'd arrived with injuries and a story she didn't tell and a quality of someone who had survived something and was not yet sure what to do with the survival. Eva went to her alone. Kai drove her to the border and waited there, because his presence, she decided, would complicate things, carried too much of Ironstone in it. And Eva crossed into Leah's territory and knocked on her door and said, "My name is Eva Sinclair. I was a medic at Ironstone. I treated you 5 years ago." Leah looked at her through the gap of the barely open door. "I remember you," she said. "I'm building something," Eva said. "Something that might be able to stop what happened to you from happening again. To other women. And I need your help." A very long silence. Then Leah opened the door. They found 3 more over the following 2 weeks. Not all of them were willing to come forward. 2 said no, clearly and finally, and Eva respected that without pushing, because the right to protect yourself from the thing that hurt you was not something she would argue with. But 3 said yes. 3 women who had been carrying the weight of what had been done to them and classified as accidents, and they said yes in different ways and with different amounts of fear, and Eva felt each yes land like something being built. Meanwhile, Kai was doing something she didn't know about until he told her. He had been, quietly and with the particular thoroughness of someone who knew exactly how information moved through a pack, building a different kind of case. Not the medical records, those were hers. His was the operational record. 8 years of enforcer work, and in those 8 years there had been orders he'd followed that he was now, with the cold precision of someone taking apart machinery they understood completely, documenting in full. Not illegal orders, nothing that crude, but orders that served one purpose: controlling information, suppressing voices, moving people out of positions where they could see things, transferring senior medics who'd treated the women, reassigning wolves who'd asked inconvenient questions. The administrative architecture of a systematic cover-up, built one small order at a time over 8 years. He had been part of it. He did not say this to her with self-pity. He said it with the flat clarity of someone doing an accounting and refusing to adjust the numbers in their favor. "You didn't know the full picture," she said again. "I knew enough," he said again. And this time she didn't counter it because he was right and he needed to be right about it, needed to carry the full weight of it without her softening the edges. She had learned enough about Kai Mercer by now to understand that the worst thing she could do was make it easier for him to forgive himself prematurely. "What are you going to do with it?" she said. "Add it to the file," he said. "And submit the whole thing to the Interpack Council." He paused. "With my testimony." She looked at him. "That's Kai testifying against Zane. I know what it means. I know what he'll do," he said quietly. "I've watched him do it to other people for 8 years. He held her gaze. "I'm not going to watch it happen to you." The room was very quiet. She thought about being 9 years old making breakfast. About her father's face at the kitchen table. About the habit of care that had been built into her so early she couldn't remember a time before it. The instinct to tend and heal and hold things together. She thought about someone caring in the other direction. About what it felt like to have someone say, "I see the thing threatening you and I am going to stand in front of it." She thought she might be in more trouble than she'd assessed. Part 5. 3 weeks into the evidence building, Maya found something in the files that changed everything. She found it late at night at the kitchen table with Eva and Kai both present, and the quality of her stillness when she found it was so complete that both of them stopped what they were doing simultaneously. "Maya," Eva said. "Give me a minute," Maya said. She read it twice. Then she set it down and looked at both of them and said, "Zane didn't start this." Eva stared at her. "His father," Maya said. She turned the document around so they could see it. "The first record in this pattern isn't 4 years ago. It's 14 years ago. Under the previous king." She pointed at the document, an old medical record, pulled from the deep archive, written in a different hand. The system wasn't built by Zane. He inherited it. She paused. "Which means it's been going for at least 14 years. Which means there are more women than we found. Potentially significantly more." She looked at Eva. "And it means the cover-up infrastructure, the medic transfers, the record classifications, the movement restrictions, that's not Zane's work alone. That's institutional. That's built into the pack administration at a level that survives leadership changes." The weight of it settled into the room. "It's not one bad king," Eva said slowly. "It's a bad system," Maya said. "That produces bad kings and protects them." Eva looked at Kai. He was looking at the document with an expression she hadn't seen before. Something that was past anger, past the thing that could be directed at a single person. Something that was reckoning with something much larger than what he'd thought he was reckoning with. 8 years, he said quietly. "You didn't build it," Eva said. "I maintained it," he said. "Every time I followed an order that was part of this, every transfer I escorted, every file I delivered, every wolf I moved away from inconvenient information," he stopped. "I maintained it. Kai. I know I didn't know the full picture," he said with a steadiness that cost him. But I'm adding this to what I owe. He looked at Maya's document. And I'm going to, he stopped. Start it again. This is bigger than the Interpack Council, he said. This needs to go to the High Accord. Eva and Maya looked at each other. The High Accord was the governing body above the Interpack Council, older, rarer, convened only for matters of systemic pack law violation. It had the authority to dissolve pack leadership entirely, to mandate structural reform, to reach inside a pack's administration and pull out the rot, root by root. It had been convened twice in recorded history. To get to the High Accord, Eva said carefully, we need evidence of systemic violation, not individual instances, pattern evidence, documented, verified, going back 14 years, Maya said. Which means we need more women, Eva said. Which means we need more time, Kai said. Which was when the door opened. It was not Maya or Eva or any of the women they'd found. It was Zane's beta, a wolf named Cole, broad and serious and currently standing in Kai's doorway with an expression that was professionally neutral and personally uncomfortable. He looked at Kai, Eva, and Maya, at the papers on the table. I need to speak with Mercer, he said. Alone. No, Eva said. Cole looked at her. Excuse me. Whatever you have to say to him you can say in front of us, she said. We're past the point of separate conversations. Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at Kai. Kai looked back at him evenly. Say what you came to say, Cole. A pause. Cole's eyes went back to the papers on the table. He was reading the visible edges of documents, she realized. And his expression was not the expression of a man about to threaten them. It was the expression of a man doing a calculation about what side of something he wanted to be on. Zane knows you've been in contact with the women, Cole said. His voice was careful, deliberate. He knows about the files. He's moving faster than you think. He paused. He's planning to have Eva brought back to the main compound. Tonight. The room went cold. Why are you telling us this? Kai said. Cole was quiet for a moment. He looked at the papers again. My sister was treated at the medical center 3 years ago, he said. Her injuries were classified as an accident. He met Kai's eyes. I believed it because I needed to believe it. Because questioning it meant questioning. He stopped. I'm done needing to believe it. Silence. How long do we have? Eva said. 2 hours, Cole said. Maybe less. Eva looked at Kai. Kai was already thinking. She could see it, the rapid tactical processing of a man whose mind worked fastest in exactly this kind of situation. The kind of situation where everything needed to happen at once and the order of operations was the difference between resolution and catastrophe. We don't have everything we need, she said. We have enough, he said. We have 7 medical records. 3 women willing to testify. My operational documentation. Maya's historical analysis. He looked at her. It's not the complete case. But it's enough to force the High Accord to open an investigation. And once the investigation opens, he can't touch anyone involved without it becoming obstruction, Maya said. Yes. So we file tonight, Eva said. We file tonight, Kai said. He looked at Cole. Are you in or out? Cole looked at the papers on the table. Kai. Eva. In, he said. I'm in. The next 2 hours were the most concentrated work Eva had ever done. They divided it. Maya compiling the medical documentation into the format required for High Accord submission, Kai writing his operational testimony with the direct, precise clarity of someone who had spent 8 years being thorough about things that mattered, Cole adding his own account of his sister's case and 2 other incidents he had direct knowledge of. Eva wrote the narrative, the thread that connected everything, the pattern made visible, the voice that was willing to say out loud what the documents showed. She wrote it the way she did everything, carefully, precisely, without drama, letting the facts carry their own weight. She wrote her father into it. Not sentimentally. But the pack that had buried him with a mid-rank honor and a handshake was the same pack that had built this system. The same machinery that had classified 7 women's injuries as accidents had also classified her father's service as unremarkable. It was all the same system. The same refusal to see what was inconvenient to see. She wrote that. At 1:47 in the morning, Kai hit submit on the High Accord filing portal. They all sat back. The kitchen was very quiet. Now we wait, Maya said. Now we wait, Eva agreed. Kai looked at her across the table. She looked back. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, you were right. In the throne room. The lesson will be his. She almost smiled. I know, she said. Zane's wolves came at 2:15. 4 of them in enforcer black, moving through the property with the professional efficiency of wolves who had done this kind of thing before. They came to the front door and the lead wolf knocked and said, in the flat official tone of someone reciting a script, Eva Sinclair. By order of King Zane of Ironstone Pack, you are required to return to the main compound. Kai opened the door. The lead wolf looked at him. Kai said. She's not going. A pause. Mercer. These are the king's orders. She's not going, Kai said again. He was not aggressive. He was not posturing. He was simply a fact standing in a doorway, solid and immovable and completely quietly certain. And I'd like you to think carefully about what you're being asked to do here. All four of you. He looked at them individually one at a time. You've worked with me for years. You know what I am. You know what I can do. He paused. I'm asking you to think about why the king needs a medic returned to the compound at 2 in the morning. I'm asking you to think about what you're actually part of. The four wolves looked at each other. The lead wolf's hand went to his comm unit. The high accord filing was submitted 40 minutes ago, Kai said. It's already in the system. Any action taken against Eva Sinclair or anyone in this house from this point forward is obstruction of a high accord proceeding. He held the lead wolf's gaze. Think carefully. A very long silence. The lead wolf lowered his hand. We'll report back, he said. I'd recommend that, Kai said. They left. He closed the door. Behind him from the kitchen, Maya's voice. That was the most intimidating thing I have ever witnessed, and I grew up in a house with 4 brothers. Eva exhaled. She put her hand over her mouth and breathed. Kai turned from the door. She was standing in the kitchen doorway and he crossed the room and stopped in front of her, and his expression was the most open she'd ever seen it. All the walls still there but every door in them unlocked, standing slightly ajar. Are you all right? He said. Yes, she said. Are you? I will be, he said. Which was different, she noticed, from his usual deflection. Not fine, not it's nothing, not the reduction to utility. I will be. A future tense. A statement about something that was going to take time and was worth taking time. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. And they stood close together in the kitchen doorway at 2:30 in the morning, and neither of them moved for a long moment. Part 6. The high accord acknowledged receipt of the filing at 6 a.m. By 8 a.m., Zane's legal team had filed a countermotion arguing that the submission was invalid on procedural grounds. Specifically that Kai Mercer, as an active pack enforcer, did not have standing to submit evidence against his own alpha without Beta Council authorization. It was a narrow argument. It might not hold, but it slowed things down. By 10 a.m., Zane had suspended Kai's enforcer status. The notification came through official channels, flat and administrative. Kai Mercer's active duty status is suspended pending review of conduct unbecoming an enforcer. All pack authority and access are revoked with immediate effect. Kai read it at the kitchen table, set his phone down, said nothing. Eva looked at him. 8 years, she said quietly. 8 years, he confirmed. And now? He looked up. Now I'm a wolf with no pack authority and no official standing in a house at the edge of territory. He paused. And a lot of information that Zane would prefer I didn't have. He's going to move against you, she said. Directly. Now that the authority is gone. Yes. What does that look like? It looks like 4 wolves coming back to this door, he said. But next time not for you. She was quiet for a moment. Can you? I'm not going to run, he said. That's not. He stopped. That's not what I'm going to do. I know, she said. She hadn't actually been about to suggest running. She'd been about to ask if he could defend himself, which was a different question and one she already knew the answer to. But she appreciated the clarity of his answer. The problem was not Kai's ability to defend himself. The problem was that defending himself physically against wolves acting on Zane's orders would be characterized as an attack on pack authority and would undermine the high accord filing. It was a trap. A simple, elegant trap. Force a confrontation. Make Kai look like the aggressor. Taint the filing with the optics of a rogue enforcer taking violent action against pack leadership. He's smart, she said. He's been doing this for a long time, Kai said. Maya came in from the main room. She had been on her phone for the last 2 hours, working a network of contacts that Eva was sometimes staggered by. I've been talking to the high accord legal office, she said. The countermotion is flimsy, but it buys Zane 72 hours while they rule on it. She sat down. In 72 hours he can do a lot of damage. She looked at both of them. He's already put out communications to the 3 women who agreed to testify. Leah received a message this morning. A warning. What kind of warning? Eva said. The kind that doesn't technically threaten anything but leaves no question about what's being implied. Maya's jaw tightened. Leah called me. She's scared. Eva closed her eyes briefly. She doesn't have to go forward, she said. None of them do. I told them that from the beginning. Their safety. Leah said she's not backing down, Maya said. She said, and I'm quoting, I've been scared for 5 years. I'm tired of it. She paused. But she needs to know she's protected. She is, Kai said. Maya looked at him. Zane suspended your authority this morning. My pack authority, Kai said. Not my ability to protect people. He met Maya's eyes steadily. I'm not less capable because Zane revoked a title. Maya looked at him for a long moment. No, she said. I suppose you're not. The second blow came that afternoon. Cole called. His voice was careful and tight in the way of someone trying to convey urgency without showing fear. They went through your medical center records, he told Eva. All of them. Zane's legal team requested administrative access, and the acting senior medic approved it. A pause. Dr. James tried to block it. They transferred him to the border clinic. Eva gripped her phone. Dr. James. 30 years at that center. The man who had pressed her hand and said nothing. Are the files? The physical files are still there, Cole said. But they flagged 3 of the 7 records for accuracy review. If they get amended before the high accord rules on the countermotion, they disappear, Eva said. 3 of 7 records amended. That weakens the pattern evidence significantly. Yes. She hung up and sat down and put her face in her hands and let herself feel, for just a moment, the weight of what they were up against. Not the weight of defeat. She was not defeated, she did not intend to be defeated, but the honest weight of it. The cost of it. The people being moved around like pieces. Dr. James at a border clinic. Leah receiving a warning. Ivy still at the center, still in Zane's sightline. She felt hands on her shoulders. Kai, standing behind her. His hands, those scarred, careful, large hands, resting on her shoulders with a gentleness that was so at odds with everything his reputation said about him that it landed in her chest like something breaking in a good way. Eva, he said. She lifted her face. He came around and crouched down in front of her, eye level, looking at her with those dark eyes that had been walls for so long and were now something else. Still dark, still deep, but open. Genuinely open. Tell me what you need, he said. She looked at him. The records, she said. I need copies of those 3 records before they're amended. Digital copies, time-stamped, submitted to the High Accord portal. She paused. I need them in the next 4 hours. He nodded. I have access codes that haven't been revoked yet. The suspension notification went to PAC admin, but the system update usually takes until the next business day. He stood. 4 hours is enough. And Leah, she said. And Ivy. I'll call Leah. She can come here. He paused. Ivy. I'll go get Ivy, she said. He looked at her. Eva. If you go back to the main PAC compound. I know. Zane. I know Kai. She stood. Met his gaze. Ivy is 22 years old and she's receiving flowers from a king who has done this to 7 women that we know of. I'm not leaving her there. She held his gaze. You said this house is safe. It is, he said. Then I'm going to go get her and bring her here. She paused. I'll take Maya. He looked at her for a long moment. Every instinct she could see in him was trying to say, let me come. Let me be the one who goes. Let me be between you and the thing that might hurt you. She could see him working against it. Not because it was wrong but because she was right, and the compound guards would turn him away on sight, and she was still officially a PAC member who had done nothing she could be arrested for yet. Be fast, he said. Always, she said. She was already moving. The compound was tense in the way of places where everyone knows something is happening and nobody is saying it out loud. Eva walked through it with Maya beside her and her chin up and her face doing the thing it had learned to do over 24 years of being in spaces that didn't quite want her. Absolutely, completely, undisturbably neutral. Like someone who had every right to be exactly where she was. She found Ivy in the medical center supply room. Ivy looked at her when she came in, and her eyes went first to Eva's face and then to Maya behind her and then back to Eva. Now, she said. Just one word. Now, Eva said. Ivy took off her medical center apron, hung it on the hook behind the door, picked up her bag from under the counter. Already packed, Eva noticed, had been packed for at least 2 days, which told her everything about where Ivy's head had been. Okay, Ivy said. They walked out. They were 20 feet from the compound gate when Zane appeared. He was not alone. He had 2 wolves with him, not the enforcer black of the night before. Personal guard. Which was worse. He looked at Eva. At Ivy. At Maya. His face was doing something complicated. The thin smile was gone, replaced by something raw. A man whose control of a situation was slipping and who was not accustomed to that feeling. Eva, he said. Zane, she said. You're taking her, he said. Meaning Ivy. I'm walking out of your compound with a PAC member who has the right to go wherever she chooses, Eva said. Yes. His eyes went to Ivy. Something in them that was possessive. The specific kind of possessive that was not about love or care or anything that resembled a good thing. Ivy, he said. Gently. You don't need to. She's leaving, Maya said flatly. Zane's eyes cut to Maya with the cold precision of a man who was not used to being interrupted by anyone. You have no standing here. I have standing as a PAC medic accompanying a colleague, Maya said. Which is within my rights under PAC Accord Section 14. Subsection 3 Medical Personnel Movement Rights. She held his gaze without flinching. Do you want me to quote the rest of it? Eva took Ivy's arm. Kept walking. The compound gate was 10 feet away. 5 feet. Eva. Zane's voice was very quiet now. The dangerous quiet. If you walk through that gate, the lesson will be yours eventually, she said. Again. Just like the throne room. Without stopping. Without looking back. She walked through the gate. Maya and Ivy were 2 steps behind her. Behind them silence. Then distantly. The sound of Zane making a call. They walked faster. They made it back. Kai was at the door when they came through the tree line, and he looked at the 3 of them. Eva first, then Maya, then Ivy, and something moved through his face that she was learning to read as relief expressed through the minimal channels available to someone who had spent years suppressing their own reactions. Records are submitted, he said. Time-stamped. In the high accord system 40 minutes ago. She exhaled. And Leah, she said. Here, Leah said from behind him in the hallway. Eva looked at her. At Ivy beside her. And Maya on her other side. She looked at this house that had started as a punishment and become something else. Okay, she said. We're all here. Let's figure out what comes next. What came next was the worst night. At midnight, Zane's legal team filed an emergency injunction with the Pack Court. Not the Higher Court, the Pack Court which Zane controlled, ordering the seizure of all evidence held at Kai Mercer's residence, and ordering Kai's arrest on charges of unauthorized use of Pack information systems. The arrest order gave Zane's wolves authority to enter the property. They came at 1 a.m. Not 4 this time. 8. Kai stood at the door again. But this time the calculus was different. This time they had authorization. This time he was suspended and had no authority to cite back at them. And this time if he physically prevented them from entering, the whole case went sideways. He stepped back from the door. He let them in. He stood with his arms at his sides and his jaw set and watched 8 wolves move through his house, through the rooms he'd lived in alone for years, past the bookshelves and the fireplace and the kitchen table where they'd built something real over the last weeks. And he did not move and did not speak, and the cost of that stillness was visible on his face in a way that very few things ever were. Eva stood beside him. She put her hand in his. He looked down at it, then at her. The files are already in the high accord system, she said quietly. They can't take what's already submitted. I know, he said. Then they're taking nothing that matters. He looked at her hand in his for a long moment. He closed his fingers around it. They arrested him at 2 a.m. She had known it was coming. He had known. They had talked about it briefly and practically because that was how they both operated. Facing the thing directly, naming it, making a plan. The plan was, let them take him. Don't resist. Let the high accord countermotion run its course, and trust that the 72 hours was not enough time for Zane to dismantle what they'd built. Trust. She stood at the door of the house and watched them take him, and the thing she was feeling was so large and so clearly named at this point that she stopped trying to file it away, and simply let it be there. She was in love with Kai Mercer. She had been in love with Kai Mercer for at least 2 weeks and had been filing it under inconvenient timing and problem for later and absolutely not right now. And standing in the doorway watching him walk away with his hands bound and his back straight and his dark eyes finding her face one last time over his shoulder, she let herself feel it completely. It was inconvenient. It was extremely poor timing. It was true. We're getting him back, Maya said from directly behind her. I know, Eva said. I have 17 phone calls to make. Make them. She closed the door. She did not look at the ground. Part 7. The high accord ruled on the countermotion at 9 a.m. The countermotion was denied. The filing stood. The high accord legal office issued a statement that was, in the careful language of official governance, about as close to damning as official governance got. The submission was valid, the evidence was substantive, and an investigative panel would be convened within 30 days. 30 days. And all persons connected to the filing were granted protective status under high accord proceedings, which meant any action taken against them could be challenged as obstruction, including the Pack Court arrest order, including Kai's detention. Cole called her 40 minutes later. The detention is being challenged, he said. High accord protective status supersedes the Pack Court order. He should be out by this afternoon. She sat down. Maya across the kitchen looked at her face and said, Good news. Yes, Eva said. How good? Very. Maya raised both fists in the air silently. He walked through the door at 3 p.m. He looked tired. Not defeated. Kai Mercer had a fundamental quality that was not capable of being defeated. She had concluded, like granite was not capable of being soaked. But tired. The tiredness of someone who had spent a night in a cell thinking about the full weight of what they'd chosen. He came in. Stopped. He looked at the house. At Maya and Leah and Ivy and Cole all at the kitchen table. At the organized stacks of papers. At the evidence of everything they'd built in this space over the last weeks. He looked at Eva. She was standing by the kitchen doorway. She had not moved, consciously, toward the door when she heard the car on the gravel path. She had simply found herself standing at the kitchen doorway, and decided not to examine the mechanics of how she got there. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. The word was so simple and so not simple simultaneously that everyone at the kitchen table found extremely important things to look at. "Are you hurt?" she said. "No. Are you all right?" He looked at her steadily. That clear, open, direct look that she had watched emerge over weeks from behind years of walls. "I will be," he said. She crossed the room. She didn't think about it. She did what her hands knew how to do, which was, she put one hand against his jaw, tilted his face slightly, checked his eyes for signs of something wrong, checked the pulse at his throat, and all of this was clinical, professional, entirely within her training, except for the part where her hands were shaking slightly and she was very close and looking at him like he was the most important thing in the room. "Eva," he said quietly. "I need to check." "I know what you need to check," he said. His hand came up and covered hers gently, where it was resting against his jaw. "I'm all right." She stopped pretending it was clinical. She looked at him. "I was very angry," she said. "When they took you." "I could tell," he said. "From your face. You looked back." "I always look back," he said. Simply, like it was the most obvious thing. "When I leave this house now, I look back." She understood exactly what he meant, and she let herself understand it completely. "After this is done," she said. "Yes," he said. "After this is done." His thumb moved slightly against the back of her hand. She turned her hand over and held on. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Part 8. The High Accord investigative panel arrived in Ironstone territory on a Tuesday 3 weeks after the filing. 5 members. All senior. All with the particular quality of people who had seen many things and were very difficult to manipulate. The panel chair, an ancient woman named Margaret with eyes like polished flint, looked at everything she was handed and asked questions that demonstrated she had read every word of every submission before she arrived. Eva testified for 2 hours. She testified with the same quality she brought to the summit in the previous story's world. Precisely, clearly, without drama, letting the facts carry their own weight. But this was her own testimony, her own experience, her own 4 years of watching and working and knowing things she wasn't supposed to know. She testified about the woman in the medical center, about the 7 records, about Ivy and Leah and the other women, about her father and the pack that had never seen him properly and how it was all the same system. She testified about what it had cost to say no. She did not say this with self-pity. She said it the way you describe a calculation. Here is what saying the right thing cost. Here is why it cost this much. Here is what that cost reveals about the structure it lives in. Margaret listened with the complete attention of someone who had been waiting for this exact testimony for a long time. Kai testified for 3 hours. He was methodical, thorough, and completely without self-protection. He documented 8 years of orders followed and the impact of those orders and the pattern they formed. He did not minimize his role and he did not exaggerate it. He was precise about what he knew, what he hadn't known, and what he had chosen not to look at too closely, and the distinction between those 3 categories was itself a kind of testimony. At the end, Margaret looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you here?" she said. "You had a position. Authority. Security. Everything you've described giving up in the last month. Why?" Kai was quiet for a moment. "Because I was good at protecting the wrong things," he said. "And I'd rather be," he paused. "I'd rather be good at protecting the right ones." Margaret looked at him for another long moment. "Yes," she said. "I think you would." The 3 women testified the next day. Leah. And 2 others, one who had driven 12 hours to be there, one who had been contacted through the network and had said yes the moment she understood what was happening. They testified with the particular courage of people who had been afraid for years and had decided, at some point in the recent past, that they were done. Zane's legal team cross-examined each of them. It was brutal in the way that cross-examinations of this kind are always brutal, designed to find inconsistencies, to challenge memory, to suggest alternative explanations, to make the person on the stand feel as though their experience was up for debate. Eva sat in the gallery and felt her jaw tightening progressively harder through each cross-examination. Kai was beside her. His hand found hers under the table. He held on steadily the way he did everything, without performance, without commentary, just present and solid and there. She held back. The panel deliberated for 4 hours. Eva and Kai and Maya and Cole sat in the waiting area outside the deliberation room. Leah was there. Ivy. The other 2 women. Dr. James, who had been located at the border clinic and brought back for testimony, and who sat with his hands folded and his face calm with the patience of someone who had spent 30 years waiting for this. At 6:47 p.m. the panel reconvened. Margaret set her papers down. "The High Accord investigative panel finds," she said in the flat, carrying voice of official proceedings, That the evidence presented demonstrates a systematic pattern of abuse of alpha authority within Ironstone Pack spanning a minimum of 14 years. That this pattern was sustained through deliberate suppression of medical records, unauthorized movement restrictions, coercion of witnesses, and misuse of the Pack enforcer system. She paused. This constitutes a Category 1 violation of the Pack Accords, the highest level of systemic abuse recognized under High Accord law. The room was very quiet. Alpha Zane of Ironstone Pack is hereby suspended from all Pack authority pending a full accountability hearing before the High Accord, at which the full panel of 30 members will be convened. She looked up from her papers. In the interim, Pack administration will be placed under the oversight of this panel. All Pack authority revocations issued in the last 30 days, including that of Enforcer Kai Mercer, are reversed with immediate effect. She paused. All protective orders issued against witnesses in this proceeding are extended and reinforced. She set down her papers. She looked at Eva. You were her, she said, quietly. Not as official language. As one person saying something true to another. All of you were heard. Eva could not speak for a moment. She nodded. Margaret nodded back. Zane was escorted from the Alpha compound by High Accord security 40 minutes later. Eva was outside when it happened. She was not there to watch, she was outside because the room had been full and she'd needed air. The way you need air after carrying something very heavy for a very long time and finally setting it down. She was standing in the cold evening air and Zane came out of the compound doors and their eyes met. She had expected something. Anger. The thin smile. Some last performance of authority. He looked tired. He looked like a man at the end of something, which was what he was. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The lesson was his. Kai came and found her outside. He came and stood beside her and they both watched the High Accord vehicles move away from the compound and the Pack. Slowly, tentatively, like something waking up from a long heavy sleep, begin to recalibrate around the knowledge that something that had been wrong for a long time was no longer being protected. It's not done, she said. The accountability hearing. The structural reform. Finding all the other women. Fixing the medical records. She paused. That's years of work. Yes, he said. Are you ready for years of work? He looked at her. I've spent 8 years doing work that made things worse, he said. I think I can manage years of work that makes them better. He paused. If I'm not doing it alone. She looked at him. You're not doing it alone, she said. He reached out. Tucked her hair back very carefully the way you touch something you've been careful with and are now finally allowed to be tender with. After this is done, she said. He smiled. A real one. Full and warm and changing his whole face. The smile of a man who had not smiled like that in a very long time and had decided it was worth trying again. Eva, he said. It's done enough. She looked at him. At this man who had been the king's weapon and had chosen, at cost, to become something else. Who had walls so high and thick she'd spent weeks talking to them before any doors appeared. Who had sat in a cell overnight rather than run from a fight he'd chosen with his whole conscience. Yes, she said. It is. She stepped forward. He met her halfway. Part 9. Winter turned toward spring in Ironstone territory the way it did in the high country. Grudgingly and then all at once, the snow retreating from the lower valleys first and then, in a single week that felt like an exhale from everywhere. Eva stood in the herb garden and looked at what was coming back. The garden behind Kai's house had been her project for 3 months now. Had started as occupying her hands during the days of waiting and evidence building and had become something else. Something that was hers. The wolfsbane and yarrow and heartleaf were coming up green and certain through the last of the cold soil, and she looked at them with the satisfaction of a person who had planted something in difficult ground and watched it come up anyway. Dr. James is back, Maya said, appearing at the garden gate with 2 cups of coffee and the expression of someone delivering good news they've been looking forward to delivering. Full senior position. Reinstated this morning. Good, Eva said. She took the coffee. And Leah accepted a formal apology from the interim Pack administration yesterday. Maya sat down on the low garden wall. She cried apparently. The good kind. A pause. Ivy is doing well. She's been assigned to Dr. James's team. That's perfect, Eva said. I know. Maya looked at the garden. You look different. I feel different, Eva said honestly. Good different. Yes. She looked at the herbs coming up through the soil. The kind of different that comes when you stop spending all your energy surviving and have some left over for other things. Maya made a sound that was trying not to be smug and failing. And by other things you mean? The garden, Eva said. Right, Maya said. The garden. The High Accord accountability hearing was set for summer. The structural reform panel, which Eva had been asked to join as a medical voice, was meeting monthly. The pattern of the previous 14 years was being fully excavated. Slowly and with the thoroughness that such work required. It was, as she'd said, years of work. She was ready for it. She had, against all odds and in the least expected circumstances, Found the thing she'd been building toward without knowing it. A purpose large enough to hold all the years of paying attention, all the knowledge carefully accumulated, all the medical skill and the pattern recognition and the particular bravery of someone who had learned, young, to do the necessary thing regardless of the cost. She had also found other things. Smaller things. Daily things. The sound of someone else in the kitchen in the morning. Coffee appearing on the counter before she got there. Books left face down with the page marked on the table or the arm of the chair or once, memorably, on the edge of the bathtub, because Kai Mercer read the way he did everything else, with complete absorption and no concern for convention. A companion in the evenings, quiet and present and genuinely there in the way she'd stopped expecting people to be genuinely there. Someone who listened to her think out loud and responded with the specific quality of a person who had been waiting to hear what someone else was thinking and found it consistently interesting. Someone who looked back when he left. Who always looked back. Her mother came in April. Eva had not expected it. Had sent a message weeks ago just, "I'm well. I'll explain when I can." And had received nothing back for so long she'd concluded the silence was the answer. But her mother came. She appeared at the gate on a Wednesday morning with a bag and the expression of someone who had been assembling courage for a long time and had finally assembled enough. She was smaller than Eva remembered. Or perhaps Eva was standing more fully upright than she used to and the comparison had shifted. They looked at each other through the gate. "You're all right," her mother said. "Yes," Eva said. "I heard what you did." Her mother's voice was careful. "Everyone heard what you did." A pause. "Your father," she stopped. "Your father would have." She stopped again. "I know," Eva said. Her mother pressed her lips together. Something moved through her face. The particular grief of someone who left and knows they left and has no clean way back except through the door that's in front of them. Eva opened the gate. Her mother came through it. They stood in the garden with the herbs coming up around them and said nothing for a long time. Then her mother looked at the house and at the man who had appeared in the doorway, large, quiet, dark-eyed, holding the door open with the particular quality of someone making space without intruding. "Is that him?" her mother said. "Yes," Eva said. "He's very..." Her mother paused, apparently searching for the word. "I know," Eva said. Her mother almost smiled. "Good," she said. "He looks like someone worth keeping." The evening she always returned to afterward, when she thought about how things had changed, was not the hearing or the filing or any of the formal moments. It was a Thursday in late April. Ordinary in every way. She was at the kitchen table with files for the reform panel. Kai was in the main room reading. She could hear the specific silence of Kai reading, which was different from other silences in ways she couldn't precisely articulate but knew absolutely. Maya had gone back to her own pack 3 weeks ago. Had stayed as long as she was needed and then gone, because Maya always knew exactly how long to stay and when to go. It was one of her gifts. And the house was quiet in a different way than it used to be. Not the structural quiet of one person's long aloneness. The living quiet of 2 people comfortable in the same space. She looked up from her files. He was in the doorway of the main room, leaning against the frame, book in hand, watching her with those dark eyes that had been walls and were now something else. Windows, she thought sometimes. The kind you could see through from both sides. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. "You were frowning at the files. The reform panel wants to expand the medical oversight provisions and the draft language is..." She stopped. "You don't want to hear about the draft language." "I do actually," he said. She looked at him. "I genuinely want to hear about the draft language," he said. "Bring it here." She picked up the files and went to the main room and sat beside him on the wide couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. And she explained the draft language and he listened with complete attention and asked 2 questions that were, she had to admit, exactly the right questions. "You've been reading the Accord provisions," she said. "I told you," he said. "I read." She looked at him. "Kai. Eva. I love you," she said. Directly. Without preamble or softening or the careful approach she usually applied to large true things. Just, here it is named in the air between us. He was quiet for exactly 1 second. "I know," he said. And his voice had the warmth in it that she'd been watching accumulate over months. The warmth behind the walls. The bell-tone quality of a person who was fully, finally present in their own life. "I love you too. I have for a while." He paused. "I wasn't sure what to do with it. And now." He reached over and put the files on the table and took her hand. "Now I know exactly what to do with it," he said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The fire was going. Outside, the spring night was doing what spring nights do. Full of sounds that summer would make louder and winter had silenced, the world reinstating itself after the cold. She thought about the throne room. About the cold floor and the 5300, watching eyes and the thin smile. She thought about the lesson being his. She thought about what it had cost and what it had built and the profound, grounded, clear-eyed contentment of someone who had paid a real price and received something real in return. "Thank you," she said. He looked down at her. "For what?" For catching up, she said. He made a sound that was definitively a laugh. Quiet and real and coming from somewhere he'd been keeping it for years. Thank you, he said, for being patient while I did. 6 months later, at the Higher Court accountability hearing, the full panel of 30 members found Zane guilty on all 3 counts of Category 1 PAC violation. He was stripped of his title and his PAC authority permanently, and the structural reform mandates for Ironstone PAC were made binding mandatory oversight, reformed medical reporting protocols, an independent medical authority that answered to the Higher Court rather than PAC leadership, and a new provision in PAC law explicitly protecting any PAC member who came forward with evidence of alpha misconduct. The provision was called the Sinclair provision. She had not asked for that. When Margaret told her, in the hallway after the ruling, she had said, "That's not necessary." "No," Margaret said. "But it's right." She looked at Eva with those flint eyes that had seen more than most people would see in 3 lifetimes. "You said no in a throne room. You knew the cost and you said no anyway. The law should remember that." Eva looked at her. "My father," she said. "He was mid-gamma of this PAC for 20 years. He was," she paused. "He was good. He was quietly, faithfully, completely good. And nobody remembered his name." Margaret held her gaze. "The PAC will remember yours," she said. "Not because you want it to. Because you made it impossible not to." She shifted for the first time at 25. It surprised her the way late shifts always surprised people. That sudden internal cascade, that recognition, the wolf that had apparently been patient enough to wait for a life worth running through. She was in the meadow behind the house, alone in the blue early morning when it happened. She was silver white, the color of new snow and old moonlight and the inside of a cloud. She stood in the meadow and felt the world through new senses, and the word that came to her was not wonder, though there was wonder. The word was finally. Not because she'd been incomplete before. She hadn't been. She had been entirely herself. But this was the rest of it. This was the part that had been waiting. She ran. And Kai's wolf came from the tree line. Dark as midnight, enormous, steady as everything he was, and ran beside her. They ran until the sun was fully up and the meadow was gold. The PAC heard them. The howl went up. She threw her head back and answered. The thing about punishment is that the person giving it always believes it will diminish you. They forget that the same fire that's meant to burn you down is the one that shows you what you're made of. Eva Sinclair was given to the king's deadliest warrior. She found the most honorable man in the PAC. She was meant to be silenced. She rewrote the law. She was sent to the edges. She built something that lasted. Whatever you've been given that was meant as a punishment, look at it carefully. It might be the thing that changes everything. Dan, if you made it all the way here, if you stayed with Eva and Kai from that throne room all the way to that meadow, I want you to know that you are exactly the reason I tell these stories. What was your favorite moment? Was it when she walked out of the throne room and said the lesson will be yours eventually? Was it Kai standing at the door and saying she's not going? Or was it that meadow at the end when everything was finally right? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if you are not subscribed, please, I am asking you with everything I have, subscribe right now. This channel is built on stories exactly like this one. There are so many more coming. Hit the bell. Join the family. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, say no when no is the right answer. Even when it costs you. Especially then. Red Heart Wolf Face Crown.